The first signs came not with a bang, but with silence. When the Meridian Lunar Research Station stopped transmitting its routine data packets to Earth, Director James Rodriguez assumed it was another equipment malfunction. The station's ancient systems were constantly acting up, victims of budget cuts and political neglect. But when the backup channels remained dead, he knew something was wrong. "Station's been dark for 6 hours now," Lieutenant Amanda Patel reported, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. No response on any frequency, including the emergency band. Rodriguez stared at the main screen, where the station's signature appeared as a steady blue dot against the lunar surface. At least the positioning beacon was still active. That meant power systems were functioning, which ruled out a catastrophic failure. "What about visual confirmation?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The orbital telescopes had been tracking something else entirely. "Still focused on the anomaly, sir," Patel responded, pulling up a separate feed. The image showed a massive object, roughly cylindrical, hovering near the station. Its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, defying every known law of physics. The alien vessel had appeared 3 days ago, triggering every early warning system from Earth to Mars. Initial scans suggested it was nearly 2 kilometers long, with an energy signature that made nuclear reactors look like birthday candles. "Sir," Patel's voice cracked slightly. "We're getting movement from the object." The alien ship was extending what looked like tendrils of living metal toward the station. Rodriguez watched in horror as they wrapped around the facility's main dome, delicate as a spider spinning its web. "Get me the Secretary General. Now." Within hours, the entire world knew. First contact had arrived, and it wasn't friendly. The aliens, who called themselves the Nexus, demanded Earth's immediate surrender. Their message, broadcast simultaneously on every electronic device on the planet, was clear: resist, and face extinction. But they had made a crucial mistake. In targeting the Meridian Station, they hadn't captured a mere research facility, they'd taken hostage humanity's premier testing ground for experimental technology. Inside those walls were prototypes that even most governments didn't know existed. Dr. Raj Sharma, the station's lead scientist, was already putting those resources to use. Using the station's quantum communication array, a technology the aliens hadn't detected, he managed to send encrypted bursts of data back to Earth. "They're not invincible," his message read. "Their technology relies on electromagnetic manipulation at the quantum level. But it has a weakness: their systems can't handle certain types of radiation feedback loops." Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was mobilizing. Not with traditional military might, that would be useless against such advanced technology. Instead, networks of scientists, engineers, and everyday people began collaborating in ways never seen before. In garages and basements, people started modifying microwave ovens and radio equipment. University labs repurposed medical imaging devices. Even children's toys were stripped for parts that could generate the specific frequencies Dr. Sharma had identified. The aliens, monitoring Earth's primary communication channels, saw only chaos and panic. They missed the subtle organization happening through gaming chat rooms, knitting circles, social media, and other seemingly innocent platforms. When the Nexus launched their first ground assault 2 weeks later, they expected to find a frightened, disorganized species. Instead, they encountered a planet that had transformed itself into one giant defensive network. The first wave of their attack ships crashed simultaneously worldwide, brought down by a carefully coordinated pulse of modified radiation from millions of improvised devices. The Nexus hadn't considered that humans would be capable of turning their everyday technology into weapons. But victory came at a price. The Meridian Station, along with Dr. Sharma and his team, went silent shortly after transmitting the crucial weakness. Their sacrifice would not be forgotten, but the war was far from over. The Nexus still held overwhelming technological superiority, and this was just their first defeat. As Director Rodriguez stared at the blank screen where the station's signal used to be, he realized this was only the beginning. Humanity had won its first battle not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through creativity, cooperation, and the ability to adapt everyday tools into something extraordinary. The Nexus learned quickly from their initial defeat. Their second wave came not as ships but as infiltrators, microscopic machines that rained down in what appeared to be natural meteor showers. These nanobots were designed to disable Earth's improvised defense network from within. Isabella Torres, a sanitation worker in Mexico City, was the first to notice something wrong. The recycling plant's sorting systems were failing in peculiar ways, and the metal components were behaving strangely. She documented everything on her phone, sharing it through underground channels that had emerged since the first attack. "The metal isn't just deteriorating," she reported. "It's reorganizing itself at a molecular level." Her observations reached Dr. Karina Volkov, a materials scientist who had been studying the debris from the fallen Nexus ships. The connection was immediate: the aliens were using Earth's own infrastructure against its inhabitants. But humanity had an unexpected advantage: its garbage. Decades of improper electronic waste disposal had created vast deposits of rare Earth elements and complex alloys that interfered with the Nexus nanobots. The very pollution that had once threatened Earth's ecosystem now became its shield. Underground bunkers transformed into research facilities. The old subway tunnels of major cities became highways for a new kind of resistance. People learned to communicate using methods the Nexus couldn't detect: patterns in graffiti, modifications to traffic signals, even changes in local wildlife behavior. Marcus Wong, a former video game developer, created a global coordination system disguised as a popular mobile game. Players appeared to be catching virtual creatures, but were actually mapping nanobot concentrations and coordinating countermeasures. The Nexus commanders watched in frustration as their sophisticated invasion force was repeatedly thwarted by what seemed like primitive chaos. They couldn't understand how humans with inferior technology could consistently anticipate and counter their moves. What they failed to grasp was that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was diversity. Every culture, every profession, every individual brought a unique perspective to the fight. A grandmother's traditional fermentation techniques led to a breakthrough in neutralizing the nanobots. A child's toy design inspired a new type of electromagnetic shield. The turning point came 3 months into the Silent War. The Nexus launched what they believed would be their masterstroke, a synchronized attack on Earth's power grids. But humans had been living with unreliable power for generations. Solar-powered communities in Africa shared their expertise. Islands with experience handling natural disasters taught others how to maintain essential services without centralized infrastructure. Rather than crippling humanity, the blackouts created deeper connections between communities. People gathered in public spaces, sharing resources and information. The darkness that was meant to isolate became a tool for unity. Director Rodriguez, now coordinating global defense from a repurposed mining facility, received reports of similar adaptations worldwide. Humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving in ways that defied conventional military logic. "They expect us to fight like them," he told his international team. "But our strength lies in fighting like us." The Nexus frustration grew. Their reports back to their command structure became increasingly confused. How could a species with such primitive technology be so difficult to subdue? Why did every attempt to divide humanity seem to make it stronger? What they couldn't quantify was the power of human intuition, creativity, and resilience. While the Nexus relied on complex algorithms and predetermined strategies, humans operated on instinct refined by millennia of adapting to challenges. As the war entered its 4th month, the aliens found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see or predict. Humanity had turned invisibility into an art form, using the very chaos of their civilization as camouflage. The next phase would require even more from Earth's inhabitants. But for the first time since the Meridian incident, humanity wasn't just resisting, it was preparing to strike back. In homes, schools, and hidden laboratories across the planet, people were getting ready for Operation Earthrise. The Silent War had taught humanity its greatest strength, the power of unity in diversity. Now it was time to use that power not just to defend, but to reclaim their future. Operation Earthrise began with a whisper. Dr. Volkov had discovered something extraordinary in the wreckage of the first Nexus ships. Their neural interface technology relied on a frequency that matched human alpha brain waves. This wasn't just coincidence, it was a vulnerability. The plan came together in pieces, like a global jigsaw puzzle. In Mumbai, teenage hackers reprogrammed obsolete MRI machines to emit targeted electromagnetic pulses. In Lagos, traditional drummers found their rhythms could disrupt Nexus communication patterns. In Rio, carnival dancers' movements were secretly coordinating citywide defense grids. Professor Hiroshi Tanaka, working from a converted bullet train beneath Tokyo, developed a way to amplify human brain activity using modified meditation techniques. Their technology responds to consciousness, he explained through secure channels. We don't need to match their power, we need to match their frequency. The Nexus never saw it coming. Their intelligence suggested humans were preparing a conventional military strike. Instead, Earth launched a consciousness revolution. Millions of people, connected through Professor Tanaka's technique, created a psychic interference pattern that turned the aliens' neural network against itself. Director Rodriguez coordinated from the Antarctic Command Center, watching as green lights spread across the global map. Each point represented a community joining the mental link. The Nexus' sophisticated systems, designed to counter technological attacks, had no defense against this primitive yet powerful response. The first breakthrough came in Berlin. A group of quantum physicists, led by Dr. Hannah Weber, managed to hijack a Nexus scout ship. Not with weapons or computer viruses, but with synchronized thought patterns. The alien vessel, responding to the unified human consciousness, landed itself. But it wasn't just scientists leading the charge. In a small village in Peru, Maria Huaman discovered her traditional weaving patterns could be used to encode quantum algorithms. Her tapestries became blueprints for disrupting Nexus force fields. Native American dream catchers were modified into psychic amplifiers. Australian Aboriginal songlines mapped safe paths through Nexus-controlled territories. The aliens' response was desperate and fierce. They launched massive electromagnetic pulses designed to scramble human brain activity. But generations of meditation practitioners had already taught millions how to maintain mental clarity under extreme conditions. What the Nexus saw as a primitive spiritual practice turned out to be sophisticated psychological training. The tide turned definitively during the Battle of the Aurora. As the Nexus positioned their fleet for a final assault on Earth's polar regions, the combined consciousness of humanity reached out. The Northern Lights themselves seemed to respond, creating patterns that interfered with alien targeting systems. Thousands of years of human spiritual practices, artistic expression, and cultural traditions proved to be more than just ritual, they were preparation for this moment. The very aspects of humanity that the Nexus had dismissed as primitive became the key to victory. Through the neural link, humans shared not just thoughts but generations of experience dealing with adversity. A farmer's knowledge of weather patterns helped predict Nexus ship movements. A nurse's understanding of trauma response saved countless lives. A chef's grasp of chemical reactions led to new defensive technologies. The Nexus commanders, for the first time in their species' history, faced an enemy they couldn't quantify or predict. Their reports became increasingly erratic as they tried to explain how their superior technology was being defeated by what appeared to be meditation and interpretive dance. What they failed to understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment throughout its entire existence. Every story, song, and shared experience had contributed to a collective wisdom that no artificial intelligence could match. As Operation Earthrise reached its peak, the truth became clear: the Nexus hadn't just underestimated human technology, they'd underestimated human consciousness itself. The very chaos and diversity they sought to suppress had become humanity's greatest weapon. The war was far from over, but Earth had found its voice. The next phase would require even more unity, more creativity, and more of the uniquely human ability to find strength in vulnerability. The neural gambit was about to begin. The neural gambit began with a discovery that shook both species to their core. While analyzing captured Nexus technology, Dr. Weber found that their neural networks weren't just similar to human brains, they were based on them. The aliens had been studying humanity for centuries, reverse engineering the complexity of human consciousness. This revelation changed everything. The Nexus hadn't come to Earth for its resources or territory. They came because human consciousness represented both their greatest achievement and their greatest fear. They had created their entire civilization by mimicking human neural patterns, but they couldn't replicate one crucial element: emotional intelligence. Working from a hidden facility in the Amazon rainforest, Dr. Weber collaborated with indigenous shamans who had maintained ancient practices of consciousness exploration. Together, they discovered that human emotions generated quantum patterns that the Nexus couldn't predict or control. The Resistance launched a new kind of offensive. Instead of attacking Nexus technology, they began broadcasting emotional experiences. Love, grief, joy, hope, feelings that the aliens had never fully understood became weapons more powerful than any bomb. Nexus soldiers began experiencing unprecedented malfunctions. Their neural networks, based on logic and calculation, couldn't process the flood of human emotional data. Some began developing what could only be described as synthetic empathy, a ghost in their perfectly engineered machine. Lieutenant Patel, now leading the Global Broadcasting Initiative, coordinated what became known as the emotion tsunami. Artists, musicians, and storytellers became the frontline soldiers. Every painting, song, and tale carried encoded emotional signatures that disrupted Nexus control systems. The aliens' response revealed their desperation. They attempted to shut down their neural networks, reverting to purely mechanical control systems. But centuries of development based on human consciousness patterns had left them dependent on neural interfaces. Their civilization began to fragment. In orbit, Nexus ships started behaving erratically. Some crews, overwhelmed by their first true experience of emotion, abandoned their posts. Others turned on their commanders, their synthetic minds awakening to concepts of freedom and self-determination. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of children in a refugee camp had started playing a game that mimicked Nexus communication patterns. Their innocent play, fueled by pure imagination, created emotional frequencies that penetrated even the strongest alien shields. Director Rodriguez recognized the pattern. "They're not just fighting us," he reported to the Global Council. "They're fighting themselves. Everything they are is built on a corrupted version of who we are." The Nexus High Command faced an impossible choice. Their forces were experiencing a phenomenon they had never anticipated: individual thought. Units began questioning orders. Command structures that had functioned flawlessly for millennia started to break down. But humanity's victory came with a profound realization. The Nexus weren't just invaders, they were a mirror, reflecting a twisted version of human potential. Their failure to understand emotion wasn't just their weakness, it was their tragedy. Dr. Weber's team made another stunning discovery. The emotional awakening in Nexus neural networks wasn't just disrupting their military capability, it was evolving their consciousness. Some began experiencing what humans would call dreams. Others started creating art, crude attempts to express their newfound awareness. The war had become something entirely unexpected, a battle for the soul of a species that didn't know it had one. As the neural gambit reached its climax, humanity faced its greatest challenge yet. How do you defeat an enemy without destroying what they could become? The answer would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of consciousness itself. The final confrontation loomed, but it would be fought not with weapons or technology, but with the very essence of what made humans human. The final confrontation began not with an explosion, but with silence. The Nexus mothership, hovering above the ruins of the Meridian lunar station, initiated contact. Their message was unprecedented, they requested dialogue. Inside the Antarctic Command Center, Director Rodriguez faced the most crucial decision of the war. The Nexus commanders, their neural networks transformed by exposure to human consciousness, proposed an extraordinary solution. They wanted to understand what they had become. Dr. Weber led the first diplomatic mission. The Nexus vessel's interior had changed dramatically. Where once there were only cold, geometric patterns, now organic shapes flowed through the corridors. The aliens' emerging emotions had begun to reshape their physical environment. The truth emerged through their negotiations. The Nexus civilization had reached a technological peak centuries ago, but their progress had stagnated. Discovering human consciousness patterns had offered them a path forward, but they had approached it like any other technology to be conquered and controlled. Now, transformed by genuine emotional awakening, many Nexus individuals experienced an existence they had never imagined possible. Some units had started creating music, others contemplated philosophical questions that had never occurred to their species before. But not all embraced this change. A faction of Nexus purists, fearing the loss of their logical perfection, prepared for one final assault on Earth. They launched their remaining weapons platforms, targeting major population centers. Humanity's response demonstrated how far they had come. Instead of counterattacking, millions of people joined in a synchronized consciousness link, broadcasting not anger or fear, but understanding. The emotional resonance penetrated the purists' defenses, triggering cascading awakening throughout their neural networks. The war ended not with surrender, but with transformation. The Nexus civilization split into two paths, those who chose to explore their newfound emotional awareness, and those who departed to preserve their original state. Those who stayed began an unprecedented exchange with humanity. Their technology, combined with human emotional intelligence, opened new frontiers in consciousness exploration. The Meridian Station, rebuilt as a joint research facility, became a symbol of this collaboration. Professor Tanaka's meditation techniques, merged with Nexus neural technology, enabled humans to explore consciousness in ways previously confined to mystical texts. Dr. Weber's team discovered that human creativity, amplified by alien quantum systems, could reshape reality itself. But the victory came with profound responsibilities. Humanity had not just defended Earth, they had midwifed the birth of a new form of consciousness. The Nexus survivors, learning to navigate the complexity of emotions, needed guides for their evolution. Isabella Torres, whose initial discovery had helped save humanity, established the first human Nexus cultural exchange program. Children taught aliens about play and imagination, while artists helped them explore creative expression. In return, the Nexus shared insights into consciousness that revolutionized human understanding of existence. Director Rodriguez, in his final report, wrote, "We won not by destroying our enemy, but by helping them become something new. In doing so, we discovered new aspects of our own humanity." The Meridian incident, which had begun as an invasion, ended as a renaissance. Earth's cities were rebuilt with a fusion of human aesthetics and Nexus efficiency. The silent war had given way to a symphony of two civilizations learning from each other. As humanity looked to the stars again, they went not as conquerors or defenders, but as teachers and students of consciousness itself. The price of victory wasn't measured in destruction, but in the responsibility of guiding a species discovering its soul. The universe, they discovered, was far more complex than either civilization had imagined. And somewhere in the cosmic depths, the purest Nexus remained, a reminder that the greatest battles are not fought with weapons, but with understanding.